One thing that we know is that historically people are really averse to this idea of paying a long-term care premium that they hope they never have to use.
Let's talk a little bit in the time that we have left about long-term care considerations. You touched on it a bit when you talked about longevity risk and how that compounds the problem of long-term care. But I do want to I want to spend some time about long-term care and some of the answers and some of the tools we have today to evaluate long-term care. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Water Lilly tool that's available.
Sure am.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because we just started using that and I'm very excited about it. It really helps pinpoint the risk for individuals. But tell me your
Yeah,
thoughts
I
on long-term
mean,
care.
you're teaching a retirement class, and if you were to walk up to the average 60-year-old couple that comes into your retirement class and say, what do you have four of, or what does every 60-year-old couple have four of? They'd say, arms, legs, eyes. And I say, no, you have got four parents. And what's the likelihood that one of those is going through a long-term care event? One of those parents is going through a long-term care event even as we speak. And so for a lot of people that are approaching retirement, they don't want to deal with long-term care in the same way that their parents dealt with long-term care. I mean, you look at even my own grandparents. How did they deal with long-term care? They sort of rotated between the children who are willing to put them up, over the course of the waning years of their lives, or they go to a Medicaid funded facility, which isn't always awesome. So there's a lot of people saying, "Hey, look, I have the ability, I have the means to sort of mitigate the long term care risk, but what is the best, most effective, most cost effective way of going about doing so?" And one thing that we know is that historically people are really averse to this idea of paying a long-term care premium that they hope they never have to use, where they pay it for 30 years, die peacefully in their sleep, hoping they never have to use it. And then they do die peacefully in their sleep, never having used it. And then, they don't get any of that money back at the end. It goes to pay for someone else's long-term care. That can be a source of heartburn for a lot of different people. And so what a lot of people are doing this, and an article out of Wall Street Journal really bore this out. They said people are taking this hybrid approach where they use life insurance policies through carriers that allow you to receive your death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. So let's say you got a death benefit of $400,000. You wake up one day, you can no longer feed yourself, bathe yourself, transfer yourself, what have you, any two of six activities of daily living. You can find one doctor to write one letter to that effect. They will start giving you your death benefit to the tune of 25% per year. So say like 100,000 per year, every year for 4 years for the purpose of paying for long-term care. Now they may discount that number slightly based on the age in which you receive the benefit, but the point is they're willing to give you your death benefit while you're alive for the purpose of paying for long-term care. And that can be a much more heartburn-free approach to mitigating long-term care, because if you do die peacefully in your sleep 30 years from now, never had any need long-term care, someone's still getting a death benefit, probably your kids or your grandkids. So there isn't that sensation of having paid for something you hope you never have to use. And so it's a huge issue. You can really burn through a lifetime's worth of savings in just a couple of years if you don't have a plan in place to safeguard against it.
Yeah, and I have so many stories. I used to work with an elder law attorney who did some Medicaid planning or does quite a bit of Medicaid planning, and he convinced me to help him with these Medicaid compliant annuities. Now, these are structures that are designed just for funding care and transferring assets away from the ownership of a person so that they could qualify for Medicaid. But there's one that always sticks in my head, and I talk about in class all the time. Is I had a woman come in. Her parents were accountants. They saved well. They had over $1 million in savings. They had a house up here in Pennsylvania outside of Philadelphia and one in Naples, Florida. And when it all came down to it, she was trying to save the last $35,000 that they had. So it can really eat away at all your life savings. And everybody says they don't want to be a burden to their children. And it's a real consideration. And one of the things that I really like about this new tool that we have is an AI-based tool. I really I don't think AI is the end all be all again, but I think we have to pay attention to using them as tools. And one of them is we have a common group of colleagues in the financial independence group, and they brought to us this tool called Water Lilly. So it was put together by two really bright young individuals, and using the technology we have today, instead of just telling someone, well, if you're over 65, a married couple over 65, you've got a 70% chance that you're going to need long-term care. Most people think they're going to be in the 30%, right? They say, oh, well, that's a shame for the 70% other people. But what this new technology allows us to do is look at your family history, look at your situation, take in all these thousands of data points, and give you a probability that you're going to need long-term care, when that might be and how much that might cost. So that gets very, very personal. And we found that it's a much different conversation, because now, instead of saying, well, geez, I'm going to be in the 30, not the 70, you can look at it and say, I better pay attention to this, because my probability is 90 or high 80s, and this is when it's likely to happen. And I think that's pretty fantastic. I hope it doesn't happen for anybody. But to your point, when you use something like cash value life insurance to fund long-term care, well, geez, if you're lucky enough that you don't need that long-term care, it passes to whomever you choose to pass it on to. It doesn't stay with the insurance company. And our friend Ed Slott says there's nothing more tax efficient than life insurance.
The single greatest tax benefit in the IRS tax code is the tax-free benefit for cash value life insurance. That's a pretty big statement from someone who the USA Today called America's IRA expert. For him to make a statement like that, saying the single greatest tax benefit in the IRS tax code is cash value life insurance. I mean, that's not something you say. That's not just an off-the-cuff remark. It's a thoughtful, premeditated remark, and he talks about it in his books and at the conferences I've seen him give. But it's something I echo in my books as well.
It can be powerful. It's not for everybody, because unfortunately, anybody can open up a Roth IRA, but you've got to go through an underwriting process. So you have to make sure that it's not too costly. Because definitely life insurance isn't necessarily a low cost option, but it can be beneficial in the right circumstances. So it's certainly something that you should consider. In fact, we've adopted, and this goes back some time, when we make a recommendation for someone to use life insurance or even an annuity, and they opt not to, we have them sign a document that we keep in their file that says, we presented it to you, we don't, and we're choosing not to go forward with it. We shared the pros and cons, and we'll even attach the illustration we used. And because people are forgetful, and they'll come back and they say, why didn't you consider this? And actually, there's been lawsuits against financial advisors saying, why didn't you consider this for my family? And I know that was one of the things you talk about with Ken Fisher, is how, as a fiduciary, can he completely discount a significant, powerful tool for people like annuities and like life insurance, just for a marketing ploy, because that's what it really is. He's a brilliant marketer.
I like to remind people that the subtitle of my book, The Guru Gap, is how America's financial gurus are leading you astray and how to get back on track. And people think that just because people have critical mass, they have huge followings and loud voices on the internet, that what they're saying by definition is true.
Yeah.
That the trueness of their statements or their worldview is directly proportionate to the size of their following. That's in many cases, it's actually the inverse. Because the larger you're following, the more you have to sort of paint everything in one size fits all, paint by the number approaches, which by definition is going to apply to very, very few people. And so, as you've stated over and over on your channel, you need customized, tailored, individual advice, and there's no cookie cutter approach when it comes to this type of stuff.